I want to now introduce Illac Diaz. Let's hear from him because he is the executive director of the My Shelter Foundation, which is a non-profit organization trying to find sustainable solutions for using recycled materials for the building of clinics and classrooms in rural areas. Illac, welcome.
Thank you very much. You know, there was a very interesting comment by a UN official at Tacloban. He said, the UN builds the camp, the refugees build the city. Sometimes when you see all of these donations come in, you sometimes forget that sometimes it's very limited. Everybody else have to figure things out themselves. And that is where really our work comes in, which is, what about everybody else? You know, like a dot on the paper, you know, we were shown, everybody says, oh, so much activity, so much donations. But then we were also asked, does anybody else see the rest of the paper? And people say Filipinos are resilient. But to tell you the truth, much of the goods don't reach the very people that are hit the worst. So I'd like to discuss about that. How about resiliency and innovation? One of the things that we see a lot is a plastic bottle that is given when the relief comes in. Not only one, but we usually have tons of plastic bottles. And at that time, there were schools that were actually destroyed, and we wanted the children to have some kind of normalcy and keep on coming, you know, to have a place where they can start learning. And so you have to understand that with 20 typhoons, 5 of them destructive, you cannot always expect that large agencies, the government, you really have to start working out on how to build a revolution from the bottom up. We have to move away from consumptive of waiting for water to arrive, waiting for energy to arrive, waiting for medicines to arrive, and really start saying to ourselves, how can we teach the people? How can we not make them depend on people giving, but how can we instruct them on depend on people already knowing what to do in terms of disasters? And let me start by saying, we received tons of plastic bottles during the disaster, so much so that it was forming a big, small little mountain outside the refugee camp. And so we took these plastic bottles with our friends. Then we went to the river and started filling them up with mud. And then slowly, we got more volunteers to come in, locals, most of them displaced, and we said, help us rebuild your village. We could not get steel bars because once disaster strikes, everything is just so expensive. And so what we did was we went to places where they were killing chicken, and chicken is a very popular dish. We crushed the feathers and mixed them in the cement to have a way to bind it better, but really started rebuilding schools using plastic bottles. So filling up a bottle with mud and letting it dry is something where you can actually run a jeep over without crushing it. And then we also found a lot of gin bottles. We don't know why in the disaster we found so many gin bottles, but we found so many gin bottles, and we were actually saying, you know, can you actually donate the bottles full of gin? That way, because we couldn't get flat glass. And so what we would do is we would pile it together. Anyway, nobody donated the gin bottles with the bottles, just the bottles. But it formed a very beautiful glass front where without electricity, we would be able to at least have the children have light. Usually you would make the normal school with a small classroom, with a small window. And what people don't realize is during storms, they would shut it down, even making it worse. So you only have this much light, you shut it down. So we were kind of thinking, how can we build these classrooms not only out of waste, but actually run it out of waste? And one of the things we did, because we could not get flat glass and we could not get enough gin bottles, was actually to put a bottle full of water, not only in one place, but we would put it pockmark the whole wall, so there would be some filled with mud, but some filled with water. And then it would form a beautiful window. So the light would come in, and then what happens is it goes through the water and then refracts. And we were saying, if this was so good, maybe it's something that could solve the problems with other places that don't have access to energy. 1 billion people around the world, 20 million Filipinos without energy. So using that plastic bottle, we started saying, why don't we bring light to the refugees that started going back into their houses? How can we take that bottle and make it the cheapest emergency lighting the world has ever seen? I'd like to show you a small video of how we made it work, getting the local people to start installing light in villages that have been cut off from electricity.
Itong lugar namin, Sitio Maligados, San Vicente, San Pedro, Laguna.
Siyempre, alam mo naman, ganitong lugar, squatter area, tabing rilis, dikit-dikit ang bahay.
Madilim talaga rito sa lugar ko na to.
Wala kami dito sa loob, lagi kami sa labas. Nadadapa kasi madilim, yung dadaan mo, hindi mo alam, may nakaharang.
Tutulog na lang ako, wala ilaw eh.
Ang tawag nila sa akin dito si Mang Dimi Solar. Napaliwanag ko yung mga bahay nila madilim. Bubutas ka ng yero, lalagay mo yung bote, lagyan mo siya ng sealant, bago lagyan mo siya ng tubig na mineral, lalagyan ng sunrocks. Bago kabit mo sa bahay, lagyan sealant mo para hindi tumulo. Ganun lang kasimple yun. Dati yung ganito, tukadilim nung bago ko pagkapitan. Ngayon, nung kapitan ko na, ito na ang liwanag niya. Yan ang liwanag.
Pumili po ako kasi bote lang, tubig. Maliwanag na yung bahay mo.
Bumaba yung ano ko, binayaran ko ngayon. Simula rin makabitan ako dito. At saka itong solar bottle bulb na to, hindi mainit.
Dahil sa buti na yan, sa solar na buti na yan, gumanda ang araw namin.
Ang nalagyan na namin ito ay bali 643. Gusto nga namin tuloy-tuloy para marami nga matulungan mga tao rin na yung maliwanagan mga bahay nila madidilim.
Parang katulad na rin ng bumbilya. Yung dati natin nakakalimutan at pakinabangan na ngayon. Maliwanag yan sa bahay namin!
So, what the United Nations doesn't tell you is that sometimes to give light, you would need to, like solar light, you would need to order 4 months in advance for your production so you could get the scale that you need to give aid. Next, after that, you have to wait 2 months for it to be shipped over, clear customs. And so by the time you actually start providing light in a disaster, it actually takes about 8 months. And so during that time, they use kerosene, they use candles, but the worst one is really kerosene that they start using inside their tents when everything is consumed. This causes fire and a lot of children get burnt. And so really, for us, we started analyzing why can't we get solar? And the simple reason is 2 things. In the UN, 60 to 80% of their cost is all logistics. So everybody says, donate the food, donate the lights. But to tell you, it's most of the money you're donating is all in logistics. It's very dangerous if you do not create a local kind of system. Everybody thinks about, registered suppliers in the UN level, but really the big thing that's lacking is what about the locals? Are they capable enough in solving it? And then if you're going to stay there for 2 to 3 months and spend as much of money, nobody ever asks what's going to happen next. And that is the issue when it comes to cycles of climate change, cycles of typhoons. How do you empower the people to be the greatest source of solutions? And I'm just going to talk to you about the liter of light. Now, one of the things that you're going to ask is, what about the evening? And so what we would do is basically work on trying to build this kind of capacity. So no, not anymore, you know, when I was in grade school and high school and college, all I did during disasters was to pack up 3 cups of rice, 2 cans of delata. I mean, every single year, that is the outreach. And I'm saying, is that all the value that young people can do? Pack food that it will be eaten one day and then 3-4 days later will need food again. We were saying, what about, for example, why can't we localize this kind of solutions? And one of it really was, why can't we localize solar light? Why can't I teach enough people around in Manila or as a livelihood there to start building solar light? And so working with Silver Navarro, who is here, I'd like to give him credit with actually, stand up please. We wanted the way we're in with simple plastic pipes, copper boards. You could simply scratch it. So you don't have to wait for large-scale manufacturing in China. You can simply scratch it, put 4 pieces of locally available parts. Solar panels are now ubiquitous, so there's everywhere in Recto. And then LED lights, which they use for signages, and come up with a very quick system to build emergency lighting for the house and, of course, for the community. So I'd like to show you another video how within 72 hours, we were able to build street lights, house lights, and mobile chargers using the very community themselves, but also volunteers to come together and build almost 5,000 lights in Cebu, in Iloilo, and in Tacloban, all using things that they could do by hand and simple tools.
Isang pinapangarap namin sa yung mga taong nandito ngayon na magkaroon ng kahit kaunting ilaw na kasi mga ilang araw na rin kami nagtitis sa dilim. So ito sa tingin ko mga tao yun, so excited sila makita ng gabi may liwanag naman ng kahit kaunti. Well, una, hindi ko inisip kung ano man ang naging epekto sa akin ng bagyong yun. Ang ano lang dito, may katungkulan ako, responsibilidad sa barangay dahil ako nga yung barangay chairman dito. So, ang una lang, ang ano ko na lang dyan is tinanggap namin kung anong nangyari at bawat tulong naman, kahit gaano kalaki, gaano kaliit, niyayakap namin.
So for almost...
Dito, halo-halo kami. Merong mga taga-ibang barangay, merong taga-ibang barangay at meron ding hindi taga-barangay namin na nakahalo dito sa amin. Kasi kung may ilaw, maliwanag lahat. Ito may posibilidad kasi may mga bata nga. Pag natumba yan na walang makakita, pwede magkasunog. Ayun, yun din ang nakakatakot dito. Pag may kandila na nakalimutang patayin kung ano na, pwede rin yung mag-cause ng sunog.
Ginagawa namin is, ano kung pwede nating turuan ng tao kung paano gumawa ng isang solar light. Kasi yun ang pinaka essential dito kasi wala ng linya, wala ng kuryente.
Ito'y malaking tulong sa amin, lalo na sa akin, dahil nagsusulat ako gabi-gabi, wala namang kuryente. hinahandwritten ko na lahat ng ginagawa ko handwritten. So malaking tulong to sa amin. Sa aming lahat, hindi lang sa akin. Lalo na sa may mga anak na maliliit.
Hindi kami makapaniwala. Ganun pala to sa liwanag po ng daan namin. So parang nung dating kaba na dumadaan ka sa dilim, wala na siguro ngayon dahil sobrang maliwanag na maliwanag. Kita po naman natin pagbabago.
Solar, made by the people, made here in Tacloban. At maganda po dito is very madaling gayahin. Natapos nila to within 2 days namin ginawa sa Tesla, in partnership with Tesla dito sa Tacloban. At dito lang namin, 1 oras lang namin naikabit, pininturahan lang namin yung post at nakatayo na siya. So itong nangyayari dito, isang revolution to. Kasi yung tao mismo ang humahanap ng paraan upang umangat. Tapos ginagamit pa itong tipong technology. So basically, the purest form... The purest form of charity is to make yourself obsolete. What people don't tell you about solar in this country is actually those small ones are actually a big failure in a sense that they're designed to break. So we used to also import container loads of solar only to find out that a part breaks or the battery is not made, that's not available. And every 2 years, you'll have to replace the whole thing. So they always say, look, we can light 1 billion homes with this product. To tell you the truth, the product will break. What happens next is basically they go into microcredit, 50 to 70% interest to buy it again. So they don't turn over skills. They don't turn over to us how to make it. They don't turn over to us how to be able to build these kind of solar lights quickly. And that's what we want to do. With the cycle of disasters, what's important is that you make people capable of fixing it, repairing it, and make a livelihood out of the self. That way, money stays in the community. And so, not only did it help the Philippines, but we put it online and started sharing it to 20 countries around the world. And now we're one of the largest community-built solar lights in the world, and especially disasters. We work in the UN, we work in Jordan, we work in Pakistan to light up villages. And when you light up enough villages, even if it's a simple light of 3 to 5 watts, crime goes down 70%. The greatest movement is not large trucks, airplanes, professionals, high-tech, but it is putting the technology and the people that were invisible before, which is the common man, an everyday technology, an everyman technology that can help brighten the world. And only then can you light up the world. Because if we'll have to rely on one group of people to give us the technology, the product, the technology, the handout, you'll find out that people will grow ever more desperate and ever more dependent on a few groups rather than all of us make a difference. Thank you.